and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there on your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Hello and welcome, folks. It is time to dive in on today's topic, detecting, investigating, and responding to threats, best practices. These days, the threat landscape is dynamic and ever evolving, with phishing and ransomware attacks on the rise and bad actors getting more creative each day. Well, it behooves us to be as prepared as we can in our approach to detecting, investigating, and responding to threats. Of course, it's not all doom and gloom. The webinar today is about the best practices you can employ to make sure you are ready for the if and when of security threats. We've got a full house of experts here to arm you with the tools and information to level up your defense strategy. I'm sure you are all ready and pumped to get started, so we will go through just a few last bits of housekeeping out here, and then we will get today's speakers out with us. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy, and I am a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. My friends and fellow moderators Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward are here with us on live chat today. If it's your first EcoCast with me, it's great to meet you, and I thank you for being here. Now, I've got something more for you today. Other than incredibly valuable information, I've also got some prizes. Today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards that will be given away to 3 lucky winners who are here, present, and live with us at the EcoCast. And as mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. And hey, with that last little thing, we are ready to rock. Our keynote speaker today is Alan Liska, who will be joined by my fellow moderator, Scott Becker, for a lively Q&A that will set the stage for today's discussion. I'm looking forward to what you have to say, Alan and Scott, so I'm going to be kicking things over to you. Alrighty, the stage is yours, you two.
Well, Alan, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you about this topic.
I'm really excited to be here, Scott. I always love these kind of events.
Yeah, me too. So, Alan, when it comes to threats, one of the biggest one is obviously ransomware. I know the best case is to block malicious traffic before it gets through, with some combination of automated protections and phishing training. But dwell time is a well-documented characteristic of a lot of these attacks. What are some of the techniques for detecting ransomware-related traffic when attackers are inside your network, but they haven't yet initiated their attacks?
I think that that's a great question, and it shows what we're dealing with when we're dealing with a ransomware attack. It's a lot more like a nation state attack in that they're in the network for a little while. Now, dwell time has dropped a lot over the last few years. If you go back to 2019, 2020, you'd often hear stats like 42 days of dwell time versus now, according to Sophos, the average dwell time is 5 days for a ransomware actor in the network. And Microsoft, in fact, says the average dwell time from when a ransomware actor gets into the network and when they own the Active Directory server is less than 24 hours. So you're talking about two different types of dwell time, right? Do you want to protect your Active Directory server, or do you want to overall stop the ransomware attack? Because you have a lot shorter period of time to do that. Now, the good news is that most of the ransomware groups that we track use the same set of tools. So there are only so many tools that you can use as you're moving around the network. So things like Mimikatz is a big one. AdFind is another one. And AdFind is not anything that you use to give up banner ads. It's actually finding the Active Directory server and finding all the accounts associated with it. And just to be clear on that. So basically, one of the first things that the ransomware groups do is they're going to enumerate your Active Directory server. So looking for signs that something or someone is not something or someone, but someone is scanning your Active Directory server, looking for accounts and so on. That's an early sign of a ransomware attack. Looking for signs of Mimikatz in your network. Now, and you have to remember that there's Mimikatz that can sit on directly on the machine, but there's also versions of Mimikatz that run in memory. And so whatever threat hunting you're doing, looking for things like Mimikatz, you have to not just be able to find stuff that is resident on the hard drive, but also resident in memory. And most EDR solutions can do that, but you have to tell them what to look for. The last thing that is really common in this enumeration phase are PowerShell scripts. Ransomware actors love PowerShell. Now, ideally, you've locked down PowerShell and you've made it so that only admin users can use it. But even if you haven't, what you can be doing is looking for unusual PowerShell scripts being used in your network. Now, in order to do that, you have to be logging PowerShell. And I can't tell you how many incident responses I've walked into and I said, hey, let's start by looking at your PowerShell logs. Oh, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I know it can be expensive to turn on PowerShell logging, but it's such an incredibly powerful tool for finding malicious actors in your network because they love it so much. So looking for, again, and it's really simple from a threat hunting perspective, because if it's not one of your scripts, it's a bad guy's script. And so as long as you know what scripts are running in your network, and yes, that takes work, and you have to understand that, and you have to work with the IT teams and make sure that you understand what your inventory of PowerShell scripts are and when they're running and how often they should be running. But once you have that base of information, then anytime there's something unusual that's not part of your known, great. Flag that and investigate. And if it turns out to be a new script that your IT department put together, then, totally good. You can add that to your base of knowledge. But those are kind of some of the things that you can use as a really quick and easy way to detect a lot of this early activity.
I like that PowerShell tip. That's really that's just a really good quick takeaway. Um, so let's go to let's say we weren't able to detect the attack during the adversary's dwell and recon phase. When an attack has been initiated and you're trying to recover your systems and find a good state to restore to, what are some of the best practices there for, investigating the scope of the attack?
Yeah. So you want to start from the beginning. How did they get in? And then you want to look for all of those artifacts that they've kind of left behind. Again, we talked about the PowerShell scripts, but what did they use for initial access? Was it a phishing email? Was it credential compromise? We know that a lot of ransomware actors love to go after SSL VPNs. FortiGate and Sophos and all of these SSL VPNs are prime targets for these ransomware groups because there's so many vulnerabilities and they're very, very quick to exploit those vulnerabilities. So finding out how they got in and making sure they can't get back in is a big part of it. But then you really want to do forensic analysis across your network to understand, because what'll happen is they'll get the initial foothold. That's not where they're going to leave their malware. They're going to jump to a couple of machines first, and they may leave something behind on the old machines, but they're going to launch their base of operations from that second or third jump. So if you're just starting from the second or third jump, you may be missing a couple of, let's say, Easter eggs that they left behind in order to regain access to the system if they lose it. The other thing to look for are new account creations. So I've seen this multiple times in ransomware incident response where the ransomware actor will go in, once they have control of the Active Directory server, they will create 5 new admin accounts. They'll only use 2 of them during the attack. They're leaving the other 3 in reserve in case they get kicked out, because then they can easily get back in using those admin accounts. So watch for that as well. And then once you have a thorough forensic analysis, so once you've done the analysis across the network, can verify all the different hops, when you restore from backup, make sure that you are restoring in a isolated network segment so you can look for those tools. Because while we're saying that the average dwell time is 5 days, sometimes ransomware groups can be in there for a lot longer. And so you may accidentally back up some of their tools. And you want to make sure before you put those restored servers in production that you've removed any of the artifacts that they've left behind. So that's, not just the PowerShell scripts, but any tools or anything like that that may be running. And you want to monitor that closely. And then even once you put those machines in production, just in case you missed anything, you want to be able to monitor that traffic closely. The other thing, look for changed registry entries. It's not often that we see it, but some of the ransomware actors will try and hide in registry changes or try and make registry changes that re-enable their access. So you want to do a comparison of what you think the proper registry entry should be versus what's actually there.
Okay. Well, Alan, this has been a lot of just great tips, a lot of concrete stuff. Just always love to hear from you because you've got so much, real world experience and concrete things that people can do. Really appreciate your time today. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, no problem. I was always happy to talk to you, Scott.
Thank you, Alan and Scott. Such a fantastic dialogue. And like you said, Scott, having those practical real world insights and suggestions just make it that much more valuable, that much more employable. So as for all of you in the audience, hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. I've got a little test to make sure you are alive, awake, and ready to hear from our presenters today, which is why I have a poll for you to answer before I introduce our first presenters. Basically, we're just looking to know what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company. Are you looking to go right away, kind of within these next 6 months, thinking a little further out, 6 to 12, maybe 12 to 24 months, or maybe you just don't know yet, and that's okay too. You're here to get a lay of the land, learn a bit more, and then make some informed decisions. That said, I want to thank you for taking your time to answer that poll. We will have a couple polls like this throughout the day, and I do want to remind you that the more interactive you are, the more you answer the polls, say hello in the chat, and ask questions of our presenters, the more satisfying the results and the more knowledge that will be shared. There is a $50 best question prize for each session, so make sure you are throwing in some thoughtful questions along the way. Now, on today's EcoCast, we've got 4 fantastic teams presenting, and we are starting off on a strong note here, of course. Our team from eCentire will be discussing from reactive to proactive, leveraging the NIST for improved threat detection and response. So without further ado, please welcome Derek Thomas, Director of Tactical Threat Response from eCentire. And Derek, the stage is all yours.
Welcome, everyone, to From Reactive to Proactive, leveraging the NIST framework for improved threat detection and response. My name is Derek Thomas. I'm the director of the Tactical Threat Response Team, which is part of eCentire's overall threat response unit. I've been with eCentire for almost 10 years, focused solely on threat detection, and the Tactical Threat Response Team is responsible for threat hunting, detection engineering, and response activities. I'm going to talk about how we perform detection and response activities and how it maps to several NIST functions. First, we need to discuss the NIST cybersecurity framework, and then specifically the detect and respond functions within it. So the NIST CSF is designed to help organizations manage and reduce risks. It's made up of 6 core functions, beginning with governance, which is a strategy and policy, all the way through recovery. It's focused on outcomes and continuous process, and not necessarily how to do it. We're going to discuss that a little bit here. So today is focused on the detect and response functions. First, detect is composed of 3 categories, including anomalies and events, as well as continuous monitoring for those suspicious events. Third category focuses on the detection processes as an ongoing and continuous process. The respond function is composed of 5 categories, including response planning, communications, analysis, mitigation, and improvements. Let's take a closer look into the outcomes of the subcategories within detect and respond functions. The anomalies and events subcategories focus on identifying and understanding the nature and impact of potentially malicious activity. Next is security monitoring, which is simply having the ability to monitor for suspicious activity. And then finally, detection processes ensures that there is people and process to adequately support monitoring and show continuous improvement. Digging into the respond function, we have 5 categories. First is response planning. This category is focused on having a plan and testing this plan. Communications category covers roles and responsibilities, what information can be shared, and stakeholder coordination. The analysis category focuses on what is investigated, how to understand the impact of a security event, and when forensics is performed. Mitigation defines when and how containment and mitigation is performed. And finally, improvement focuses on after-action activities such as updating strategies and lessons learned. So now that we've had an overview of the basics of the detect and respond functions, let's take a look at how we put this into practice at eCentire. So it's extremely important to have a systematic approach to detecting and responding to cyber threats, and this is what we use. We refer to this as the Global Threat Framework. It is a 5-phase framework of processes that we use for threat hunting, threat detection, and response that is focused on process definition and outcomes. This framework would be a good template for assessing your detect and respond functions. It's important to note that each phase is focused on different outcomes and that this is a continuous process. As we go through the framework, ask yourself if and how these functions are done currently in your organization. Now let's dive into each phase and how the outcomes support the detect and respond functions. So the first 2 phases support all the processes for collecting and prioritizing hypotheses for what might be a security event. So you can think of this as just all the different ways you come up with ideas for what you may want to detect, and then how you go and prioritize it. You can collect this data in any ticketing system for tracking, and this can be pretty simple since this is really just the starting point of threat hunts and detection creation. In collect, organize, and process, the first 2 items are how we operationalize threat intelligence into behavioral detections. So topic tracking refers to reviewing TI from open sources for potential detection opportunities. You can think of this as anything you find on the internet that outlines potential threat and how you might detect it. We're collecting those and curating that data and creating detection opportunities on a daily basis. The second one is incident tracking. This is how we mine any security incidents for additional detection ideas. We're taking incidents that we observe and trying to get a multi-layered detection strategy for each of them so we can detect any threat as many ways as possible. So moving on, we have the third-party integration. This is the process for developing new detections from new security data, such as new log sources. We're continually looking at different log sources and the data within them to understand how we can better improve our detection. One example is over the last year, a rise in identity-based attacks, and we've really been hitting identity sources hard, looking for opportunities for threat detection. Next one is research, which is any primary research that we perform to detect novel threats. Again, we've been researching identity. We've been looking at identifying adversary infrastructure and things like that. Moving on, customer general inquiries. This is just responding to any of our customer questions, like, do we detect a specific threat actor or a specific technique? We collect all those as sources for potential detections and move them through the process. Next, we have red team assessments. This is a 2-fold project. We perform adversary emulation, so we're testing in a lab novel threat actor tools and techniques that we've observed, and really trying to understand how threat actors are performing attacks and create detections proactively. Second, we're responding to red team reports from third parties. So as you have a third-party red team test being performed, usually they provide a report. We're mining that and looking for potentials and detections, or potentially fixing configurations in your environment to leverage existing detections. So once we have documented potential detections, we'll prioritize the work in the triage phase. This will be based on a variety of considerations such as impact, prevalence, and relevance. This is where you define what's important to your organization and how you prioritize this work. Anything that needs to be addressed immediately is considered a rapid response item at eCentire. An example might be detections for a 0-day vulnerability. So you can think recently there was vulnerabilities for Citrix that were being exploited in the wild. In the past, Fortinet, anything like that, we're identifying and studying and looking for detection opportunities. So when we observe and identify a rapid response item, we'll drop anything to immediately create detections and address that threat. On the next slide, I'll discuss the outcomes of the first two phases. So here's an example of what our tickets might look like to start. We document just enough to know the priority and have a starting point for research. You might want to include anything you want in there. This can be all the details. Some potential outcomes might be a prioritized set of definitions that outline what activity is considered suspicious and why, where the data exists, what properties of that data might indicate the activity is malicious, and any references used. Now we have a starting point for our threat hunt with a prioritized topic and can move into a threat hunting and detection creation. So phase 3 is where we start threat hunting, crafting a detection, and to begin developing our response procedures. At eCentire, every TTR research is a threat hunter, and an automated detection is an outcome of threat hunting where possible. We start with our ticket of a potential detection, like the one we just discussed, and move through our threat hunt and detection phase. So first we have the research phase. This is where the researcher tries to understand everything they can about the threat actor and the attack as possible, what data that attack might show up in, what properties of that data might best identify that an attack is occurring. And based on that, they'll prototype a detection. So this will be a query in whatever product, security product, or tool that's available, and we'll sweep all of our clients for that activity. We analyze the results of that sweep, and we're looking for a few things. We're looking for benign activity, and we're looking for indicators of suspicious activity or malicious activity. Oftentimes, we identify benign activity, things we might want to tune on an ongoing basis. We'll iterate through that until we have a high fidelity detection. We'll investigate the results. Oftentimes, we won't find any suspicious activity, but if we do, we'll perform a deep dive, document our investigations, and work with our SOC and clients as appropriate. Once we have the detection in place, and after any investigation may have been done, we do an internal peer review to make sure that the detection is high quality, efficient, things like that. So once the peer review of the detection is performed, we'll move into the formal documentation of the runbook. Outcomes of threat hunting detection and creation include documented queries, findings of suspicious activity if applicable, and then also the draft investigation steps to be used in response planning. Once the threat hunt and detection is complete, we move on to the deploy and support phase. This is where we perform full documentation for how to handle the threat, deploy the detection in production, and start production monitoring. Every detection is associated with a document we refer to as a runbook, and the detection is deployed after the runbook is documented. A single runbook can be extremely granular and describe how to respond to a single detection, or can be as general as responding to an entire class of detections. It's really up to you and your expertise and who's investigating. Runbooks need to be stored in an accessible location for the organization, and something like Confluence works very well, but any knowledge base can work. It just has to be something that can be referenced during an investigation and tied to a particular alert. Our runbooks include everything needed to understand, investigate, and respond to a threat. And this is where you define how detections and response activities should be performed at your organization. Once the detection and runbook are deployed, the detection is live and is monitored for quality and any necessary changes on an ongoing basis. We meet with our SOC on a weekly as well as ad hoc basis to discuss improvements as necessary. We also keep ongoing metrics to look for tuning improvements and reduce alert fatigue. Now, the point is to continuously look and have a process for looking for any updates and things you want to improve. So let's take a look at a sample runbook. This is a pretty basic sample. We can see a lot of the NIST CSF detect and response outcomes are documented here. You can take a look at the description. This might be what this is detecting, why it's important. MITRE technique IDs should always be referenced where possible. All the references you use in case someone wants to do a deep dive on the technical resources you use to create the detection. And additional details might be interesting findings or things to look for. Then we also have the response planning. So this will be where all the response outcomes are documented. You can think of this as the what investigation tooling is used. We'll create dashboards wherever necessary or leverage existing dashboards if there's one available in the product. And then we do investigation steps. So this can be pages in itself. We try to document everything up front that we would want if we were investigating this alert. And we try to front load a lot of this expertise for the SOC analysts. Next, we have remediation steps. So this might be, if this is observed, how would we remediate this? How would we prevent this from happening in the future? Or what needs to be done immediately? Mitigation steps documents how might we contain the threat or stop it from occurring or spreading? And then the communications might define, who do you communicate internally and externally? This is really important at eCentire because we have a lot of internal communication as well as communication guidelines with our various clients. So this should be tailored to your organization's existing processes and goals. It can be a lot of work to maintain documents like this, but we believe that putting the work up front helps with consistency, quality, and scalability. So finally, we have tuning and maintenance. This is where we take the findings from the previous phase and implement them. Detections and runbooks need care and feeding on an ongoing basis, and we monitor the efficacy of detections and content of the runbook for opportunities to improve and update them as needed. So we monitor quite a bit of metrics, but some basics to think about might be things like the quantity of alerts generated, true positive to false positive ratio, and how much time was spent in the investigation. In some cases, it makes sense to decommission a detection. If the detection isn't relevant or it's prone to false positives, maybe time to retire the detection and runbook. So we'll talk about a few challenges in implementing a detection and response program. I categorize these in 3 areas: expertise, visibility, response. Starting with expertise, detection and response is really a niche field within cybersecurity, and it can require substantial experience. It can be difficult to learn without access to production data on real incidents. It's tough to learn these things in a college course or training because you learn a lot based on real-world experiences. Detection engineering also requires heavy expertise in threat actor tradecraft as well as data analysis. So moving on to visibility, you need to ensure that you have multifaceted visibility. You need to leverage all data available to you: log, network, endpoint, cloud, and anything that you could use to detect a threat. There really is no perfect visibility, and there's always a cost benefit to detections. Ingesting logs typically incurs a cost in any solution that you use, and you need to weigh the pros and cons there. Pay close attention to the NIST CSF identify function to understand what needs to be monitored. You can't monitor or detect threats on assets that you don't know about. And in my experience, I've seen many, many incidents where the threat occurred on an unmonitored asset, and it's very difficult to track that down when you don't have visibility. Next, we have response. So you need to ensure appropriate response mechanisms are in place. Fundamental response mechanisms include identity, host isolation, network isolation, and process banning. There's a lot of different ways that you can respond to a threat, but these are really the high-level basics that you need to have a solid process for. Knowing when and how to respond is tricky. It needs to be discussed and thoroughly incorporated in the response process. You do not want to be enacting a response mechanism on something like a domain controller on a false positive that has production implications. So these are things you need to be very solid on. So moving on to recommendations, you should identify current visibility in your environment and where improvements are needed. This is an ongoing item as part of the process. You should be constantly looking at this. Where can you improve? What additional data can you ingest? What can you tune out? What's important to you and what's not important to you? You need to assess the existing detection and response capabilities and leverage the global threat framework as a starting point and build processes for your organization. Take that framework and identify what do you do now and what can you do in the future. Continuously monitor the threat landscape and develop content to respond to the latest threats. And put in the time up front so you aren't learning lessons during an incident. It's the worst thing you can do is learn while an incident's going on and pull in the entire department when it may not be necessary. So let's dig a little bit into eCentire. So eCentire is the authority in managed detection and response. We've been around since 2001. We've literally been part of the creation and evolution of managed detection and response over the years. We have 2 security operations centers, one in Waterloo, Ontario, and one in Cork, Ireland, performing threat hunting all day, every single day. This is what we do, and this is our bread and butter. We operate in 80 plus countries, have 630 employees, several thousand customers. So we can leverage the data available to us, what's good, what's benign, what's suspicious, things like that, and apply that to everybody. So where do our services fall in with the NIST CSF? So the detection and response functions fall in the managed detection and response you see here in the middle in these three pillars. But we cover a spectrum of services from governance all the way to recovery. So on the left here, we have our continuous threat exposure management. This will help you identify all the things you need to do before detect and respond functions kick in. And then in the event something happens, we have digital forensics and incident response available as well. So all three of these pillars cover the entire spectrum of NIST CSF functions. So with that, we'll take a look at a few questions that we got. Okay, so the first question we got here is, how do you recommend organizations stay updated on the latest threat actor tactics and techniques to enhance their threat hunting strategies and response plans? So I would say that this really falls into your threat intelligence function. Our threat intelligence team is constantly curating information from incidents, from open source repositories, from partnerships, pretty much anywhere. So you need to have a function in your organization that's monitoring the threat landscape and also taking that data, curating it, and helping you to prioritize what's important to the organization. So I would say incorporate a threat intelligence function or leverage one from a provider. So what are the key indicators that suggest an organization needs to enhance its tactical threat response capabilities? So I would say, to me, the biggest indicator would be, are you reactive when an incident occurs? Do you have to figure it out as you go along? Are you pulling in all of an entire security team to respond to an incident? Or do you know exactly what to do and who to talk to and when something's an incident and when something's a false positive? I would say that's the biggest indicator of when you need to enhance your response capabilities. Now, everybody will have improvements on an ongoing basis. We're constantly improving and refining our processes. So there will always be some things you identify that need to be fixed. But when there's major gaps in processes, I think that's when you need to start and take a step back and think about how are you going to organize your response capabilities. Okay. So with that, thank you for attending this presentation. I hope it helped you understand kind of the basics of detect and respond, provided a high-level framework for how you can create the processes in your environment to support outcomes, and also map those outcomes to the NIST CSF framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. That was an awesome presentation, clear and practical. I feel that without personally interacting with the eCentire platform, I already know exactly what to expect if I were to use it. So great, well done. We are at time, so any of your questions that were not addressed by Derek already will be answered after the webinar by the eCentire team. There were a lot, so thank you for sending those through, and I do encourage you to continue being very active in the chat today and posing those questions as we go along. I've thrown up a poll question for you all. We'd love to get your feedback on any additional resources that you would like to explore from eCentire. Your feedback is mega valuable, so please take a moment to answer that poll, and we'll be able to hand you whatever you're looking for in a time frame you're looking for it. If you want to learn more right away, you can also go to the handout tab and click the link for the eCentire guide, questions to ask when you're evaluating an MDR provider, discerning MDR fact from fiction in a confusing marketplace. Really cool resource, really well set up. So definitely go check that out. You don't want to miss it. And this will be a perfect way for you to follow up on the combo we just had with Derek. Now, I do have something to give away. We have a prize, and this is the first of 3 Amazon gift cards worth $300 that'll be given away today. Again, a quick reminder, you must be present and live on the webinar to be able to win or be eligible to win. And with that, our first lucky winner is Nick Sherman from Georgia. Congratulations, Nick. We will be in touch after the EcoCast in order to help you claim that prize. Now, next up in today's roster of experts is Rubrik. You have probably heard of Rubrik if you've been around to a couple of our webinars. Friendly face here, Zoltan Deek, the Director of Product Marketing. And we've got a bit of a special guest here today. Salah Nasser from Zscaler is on with Zoltan to discuss best practices and how you can employ a joint solution between Rubrik and Zscaler. So if you're currently using one of these in your security strategy, or if perhaps you're looking to beef up and use an interesting cross solution, you'll be able to learn more here about how to use those in tandem. And with that, I'll hand things over to you, Zoltan.
All right. We'll jump right in here. And before we do, Salah, how are you today? Thanks for joining.
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. Looking
excited about today's topic. It's a fun topic.
Yeah, exactly. So for our folks at home, right, this webinar will be discussing some of the emerging threats we see impacting the landscape of data security, really informed by some research, really cool research from Rubrik Zero Labs and Zscaler Threat Labs. So we'll take a look at that and what the research tells us about how adversaries are going after your data. And we'll cover some best practices when it comes to protecting and securing that data. And at the end, we'll cover double extortion ransomware and how the integration between Rubrik and Zscaler helps combat that. So, all right, let's jump right in. Just to start off with, why we're here, right? Every company out there at its heart is a data company. I don't care what industry you're in, especially in today's world, you need data to drive your business. And on top of that, the data needs to be shareable in order to have value. More than ever, we need to collaborate across geographies with partners, vendors, and third-party agencies to really make business go. And that data is irreplaceable. You can replace hardware, you can replace data centers, either with another one or by moving it to the cloud. You can even somewhat replace people, but you can't replace data. If it's gone for good. So your data is uniquely important to you and it's irreplaceable. It's ultimately the #1 priority of the adversary for that reason, right? So ransomware attacks in particular, but almost all attacks are against your data. You cannot replace it. So in our last Rubrik Zero Labs report, we gained insights from over 5,000 customers across, I believe it was around 57 countries. And no surprise, they told us their data is growing incredibly fast. Data within organizations that is stored and protected is growing at about 25% a year, and it's everywhere. It's growing the fastest in the cloud and in SaaS applications, but still also growing on premises. I know just about every customer I talk to these days has a hybrid environment with workloads in multiple clouds, and of course, taking advantage of SaaS applications. But attackers know all this, and they're setting their sights where your data is. We can see that in 2022, attackers were using each of these channels to go after individual organizations with their efforts more concentrated on the cloud. Salah, what are you seeing at Zscaler?
Yeah, just to double down on what you guys are seeing, clearly we see the same thing, right? Most of our customers, if you think about the world that they're living in today, they're all migrating to the cloud, right? There's not a single customer out there. There's not a single company out there, regardless of what type of market they're in, everywhere from finance to healthcare to retail, manufacturing, etc., that is not adopting public cloud, right? And we see this, even on this call, right? We're using Zoom. We all use cloud-based email. We all use cloud-based application messaging to communicate. We use applications such as Salesforce, Slack, etc., to create, share documents, information, etc. So to your point, that data, and I wasn't surprised to see 500% growth or so in SaaS applications. Now, another point that you made that's very interesting is that data truly does equal money, and bad actors are not going after organizations just for the thrill of going after organizations from a threat perspective, right? They're putting in a lot of resources, people as well as money resources, to target organizations so they can extort money. And the number one thing that we're seeing specifically in ransomware is that double extortion is really what's on the rise, right? If we back up a few years, ransomware was skyrocketing because organizations wanted to get the equipment back, access to the equipment back that had that sensitive data. And many of them opted in to just say, you know, I have insurance, I have other resources to be able to access my data. I'm not going to pay the ransomware extortion. And therefore the increase in double extortion, almost 40% year over year, absolutely dramatic. And again, that just brings focus back to, look, you need security everywhere, you need platform everywhere, but data at the end of the day is the target of bad actors.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting, right? When we're talking about ransomware, it's not just about the ransom, as you mentioned, right? A whopping 72% of the organizations we spoke to that were hit by a successful ransomware attempt ended up paying that ransom. And they paid pretty evenly to both prevent data leaks as well as to unlock encrypted data. So when you talk double extortion, right, they're asking for a ransom to unlock your data, but we're seeing a pretty equal amount of customers or organizations out there that are paying once they get extorted because the adversary has stolen that data. And I think one of the key takeaways for me here is only 16% of the companies that paid a ransom were able to recover all of their data. So you're paying that ransom, but it's a shockingly low number that shows that bad guys are very effective at locking up and stealing your data, but not so good at making sure you get it all back, even when you pay up.
Yep, that's right. And the reality, it's still a breach, right? You still lost your data. Whether you got access back to it doesn't necessarily mean the rest of the world doesn't also have access to that data.
Absolutely. And I personally was also very surprised at the economic impact beyond the hit to your loss of data and business that may result from a ransomware attack, right? So, what shocked me was the amount of the regulatory impact. We know organizations have lots of sensitive data and can incur tremendous fines and penalties if that data is not secured. And if you think about it, one spreadsheet file alone can contain hundreds of sensitive data records. And if you do the math, a typical organization contains enough sensitive data to max out any and all financial penalties resulting from regulations. So huge stipulations there.
Absolutely. And I've talked to so many customers, CIOs, CISOs on this topic. One of the biggest roadblocks organizations have in cloud adoption in general and cloud security is, hey, as I allow my employees, regardless of where they are, regardless of where they're working, to connect directly to cloud, can I maintain can I maintain government regulations? Can I maintain compliance, et cetera? And you combine that with this fact that, look, penalties are huge. The ability for me to secure sensitive data is becoming not necessarily more difficult, but more of a focus for organizations as they go to the cloud. And I think this is a fantastic segue, Zoltan, to jump into some of the use cases that organizations should think about as they migrate to the cloud and as they look at securing their data.
Absolutely. So I think we all understand, right? Data is growing rapidly. It's the crown jewel in your organization that bad guys are trying to steal. They're using many different techniques to get at it, and ransomware is a significant and often successful tool. So they're going after your data wherever it lives, as Salah just spoke to, cloud, SaaS, on-prem. If they get it and expose it, it's going to be costly to the business. So what are some best practices to secure your data, right? I think a good place to start is to answer some basic questions, right? So we want to reduce sensitive data exposure because it's truly the sensitive data that's more valuable to an attacker and what they're going after. In order to reduce that exposure, we know we've got to start by understanding a few key things about your data landscape. What's your sensitive data and where is it located? On top of that, who's accessing it and what are they doing with it? And how has that sensitive data changed over time? So you need visibility and context into those things. If you don't have that visibility, it's going to be really hard to protect. Salah, what do you have for us?
No, you're hitting it on the nose. Look, at the end of the day, you need to be able to understand what you are securing. And as an organization thinking about this tactically as a CISO, where do I begin? Well, you begin with understanding where your sensitive data resides. And then you start moving into, hey, as I understand what sensitive data I have as an organization, I start to look at where does that data reside, and I control access to the data. I secure the applications my data lives on, right? And then I slowly expand and secure the data and the entire platform, my SaaS platform. And this is a really interesting area. And if you don't mind, I'll go through some of these different use cases that are really just foundational to securing your organization, right? I mean, it all starts with your endpoint, your data that is in motion. It's being created, it's being moved around, whether that device is a corporate device or that device is a BYO device. And that BYO device could be employees, it could be partners, it could be contractors, etc. But look, at the end of the day, Zoltan, you said it best. Data is being created to be shared, and it is everywhere. So you have to have a flexible platform that can work with any type of a device. And of course, it all has to do with identity access as well, right? One aspect that is almost always missed, and it's it's an interesting conversation to have with security professionals looking at deploying security platforms is, hey, have you thought about the integrations applications have with each other, and what level of privilege these applications have, and how do you begin to secure access to these different applications as their threat level rises? So as an example of this, Zoltan, I personally have Slack. I love Slack. I use Slack every day. I try not to jump between different messaging applications. But so what I do is I end up doing tons of integrations so I can get my work done on Slack. So I integrate Slack with a few different applications, some work applications such as my Google Calendar, Asana, things to that effect, and some personal applications just so I can manage my personal life as well. And this actually has created a back hole for many organizations that have employees such as myself who are look, SaaS platforms these days are made for these type of integrations, right? They're made to cross-pollinate between each other and to increase our productivity. But this creates a big blind spot to organizations to understand, hey, you not only have to worry these days about ensuring Salah is using a device, is secure, he is who he says he is using a device that's secure, that's not packed with malware as I connect to these SaaS platforms that have sensitive data, right? So you have all this posture control set aside for Salah, the application, the device. Well, what about the third-party applications that have integrations into your organization? So where I will leave this conversation, Zoltan, is you have to start looking at your new environment from a platform perspective. And you can easily fall into kind of chasing the use case and looking at, hey, this is the next vendor I need to solve this patch in my organization, versus looking at, hey, I have a SaaS platform, right? And I need to secure the entire platform from device to the cloud, and regardless where the data is moving. So that is a big aspect to data protection, is ensuring that you have visibility, protection, and control across your entire SaaS platform. And that typically means that you have a platform approach to your cloud security as well.
Makes perfect sense. And I'll just build off something you mentioned, which is the word identity, right? So I think when it comes to the cloud in particular, identity is more and more taking center stage, right? You spoke about things like protecting against misconfiguration of apps, and also oversharing or over-authorization of access to sensitive data, right? So I just want to emphasize how important this is. So let's think of the example of a single user who has access to a few documents that maybe they shouldn't or don't need access to. And those documents may contain multiple sensitive records. If that user's credentials are compromised, those records are exposed and vulnerable.
Right.
But it's fairly contained, right? It's one person. It's also probably rather difficult for an adversary to find this user and compromise their credentials. Now imagine hundreds of or thousands of employees across a large organization having over-authorized or over-privileged access to sensitive data, right? Now, all of a sudden, it's really easy for an adversary to find and compromise a user, and there's way more access to sensitive data across all those users. This equates to much increased risk, right? So another best practice we often talk about is really controlling access to users and applications. So if a user does not need access to a particular set of data, being able to control that access. So the more you can understand and control a user's access to sensitive data, the more you can reduce and manage risk.
100%. I absolutely. And that is truly foundational for you as an organization looking to deploy a zero trust model, right? The ability to control or to have these controls in for the user, the applications, and the data is absolutely, for those of you who are already in a zero trust model or on your way to that zero trust model, that is foundational. The other aspect of this is taking advantage of some advanced technology out there these days. Look, one area that organizations need to look at is not only what is my sensitive data, but how is my sensitive data being utilized? How is it being accessed? How is it being shared? So the ability to understand who your users are, what applications they're touching, what sensitive data is being utilized and moved around. Is it moving to trusted applications? Is it moving to untrusted applications, right? Are there risky applications accessing my data? And look, this is where the power of platforms come in, to have that centralized view with a heavy AI ML backend with deep business intelligence user behavior that is looking at this is one aspect of it. And that really helps you not have to become a data security expert as an organization to get this done, right? Heavily rely on AI ML to do that for you, to do that automated classification, to give you that visibility of where your users are connecting from, what they're connecting to, where that data is moving around. That is one area, right? Look at your data as it is being utilized, being created in motion. being able to secure it in motion. And again, this is from device to SaaS application, between SaaS application, having those tenant restrictions, having access specific controls, and also, resulting more and more, our connections to SaaS applications happen through web browsers, and more of these communications are encrypted, right? So gone are the days where I could say, hey, I'm connecting direct to cloud without going through an encrypted tunnel. But as an organization that is worried about their, imagine a hospital and their employees are distributed and people are accessing and sharing health information, right? Or they're sharing PCI information, or they're sharing intellectual property, right? Many of you on this call right now are probably shaking their heads vigorously like, yeah, we have intellectual property that goes to the cloud. Being able to see that regardless of what private tunnel it's going through. And then at the end of the day, and I think this is, securing data at rest is such an interesting conversation. And this is, if I foreshadow our solution here, the ability to ensure that it is, it's the secure, that data is there, that it's secure, whether it's residing in SaaS applications, different types of SaaS applications, if it's in your data center, your infrastructure as a service, regardless of where it is. This is where you need to have that assurance that those applications are configured properly, that you don't have overexposure or access from applications that are overly privileged to your SaaS platform or to your platform in general.
Absolutely. Okay. I'll also I'll chime in. I think one more here as far as best practices to think about when looking at data security. So this one definitely comes from a rubric standpoint. We highly encourage all of our customers to use threat monitoring capabilities specifically within your backup data, right? So we know that organizations out there have invested a ton in detection and prevention security controls, and that continues to be essential. However, we also know that attacks continue to get through, and threats in general don't tend to strike right away once they get through your defenses. There is some amount of dwell time as the bad guys look to move laterally or conduct additional recon. So in fact, ransomware dwell times average about 9 days. So think about it, that's 9 days where malicious files are sitting in your network, just waiting to detonate and compromise your data. 9 days where you have an opportunity to detect it and stop it or minimize blast radius. Monitoring for threats in your backup data gives you the opportunity to scan your entire data landscape without agents hitting your production environment. It also gives you an opportunity to track your data over time to understand if there are changes happening within it that shouldn't be. So if you're going to scan for threats in your backup data, a couple things to keep in mind. Your threat monitoring should leverage high quality threat intel and threat feeds that is automatically updated because we know IT has more than enough to do without having to manage those manual updates. And finally, sorry, working through the build there. When it comes to securing your data, again, it's not just about preventing bad guys from gaining access. It's also about ensuring your ability to recover quickly and safely when you do get hit. So having a strong cyber recovery plan and a plan that you actually practice and rehearse is key. So this is a whole webinar on its own, so I won't get into details here, but I can tell you our data shows that only about 56% of organizations out there have formal incident response plans in place, and even less regularly test them. Your data grows daily. All the places that data is stored, all the users who have access to it changes daily, and your technology infrastructure changes pretty rapidly too, right? So having the discipline to regularly plan, test, and practice recovery is crucial for when you get hit, and your ability to recover quickly and ensure that business continuity.
Right, Zoltan, that was awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for bringing along Salah. That was great. We are at time, so we won't have any time for any Q&A today, but any of you that sent in those questions, don't worry, the Rubrik team will follow up with some info around the Rubrik solution. And some of you are already beginning to answer, but I'm just going to point out there is another poll up there. So if you are interested in any additional information about the Rubrik solution, what would that be? Feel free to answer that poll now, and that will make sure you get the exact thing you're looking for right away after today's EcoCast. Now, that said, there's the handouts section of our console. If you haven't poked around in there yet, we've got 4 awesome handouts from the 4 different presenters, and we have a best practice, a data sheet, which is the Rubrik and Zscaler data at rest intelligence combined with data in motion security delivers end-to-end cybersecurity for double extortion ransomware. So pick that up. Again, really cool document. It's a PDF, and even if you're not going to read it today, you're probably going to read it down the road, as it's something you may not find just online. That said, we are going to keep things zipping along on the EcoCast. We've got a couple more fantastic presenters to go, and I want to make sure you get a maximum information here without me nammering too much. So we've got next up in the lineup from Census. This is Celestine Yaren. She's the Director of International Sales at Census, and she's going to be joining us. So Celestine, how about I hand things over to you, and then I will join you for some Q&A. That said, keep throwing in your questions today. You might win the $50 best question card from each session. And even then, something more valuable than a gift card is the information that you're going to glean from this experience. So that said, Celestine, take it away, and I'll see you for the Q&A. The stage is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mackenzie, and thank you, everybody, for your time. My name is Celestine Yaren. I'm the Director of International Sales at Census. And if you are not familiar with that name, Census is the internet intelligence platform that empowers governments, enterprises, and hundreds of thousands of security researchers every day to defend their attack surfaces and hunt for threats. Now, this is going to be a short 25-minute session in the midst of several other sessions you're on today, so I'm going to assume a broad range of skill sets on this call, and I'll do my best to set the stage and give some tangible examples for whether you're just getting started as a researcher, you're an experienced researcher with many years, or you're leading a threat hunting team. I'll try and have something for each of you to take away if I do my job correctly today. If you would want a more specialized course with Census or you need more research materials from us, we do have a number of research materials available on our website that you can take and actually action, even beyond just this quick conversation today. So with that in mind, just to make sure we're all on the same page, you can think of this session in 3 main parts where we're analyzing 1, what were the changes in the cyber risk landscape in the last year that affect how threat hunters do their jobs? Secondly, going into those best practices, what are we actually doing today? What are threat hunters doing today to adapt to the challenges and the opportunities? I'm going to be introducing some new research here that was just recently released with Census that I'm hoping will give you some insight into what's happening with your colleagues and counterparts across the world. And lastly, I'll give you a couple of tangible examples throughout the conversation as we go along. That way, you can leverage some of these materials or even some of our internet-wide research or dashboards as a resource in your own day-to-day. So with that said, that housekeeping is done, and I want to start us with really what's been changing in the cyber risk landscape for threat hunters. So if you take a step back just for a moment here, in the last few years, I always say businesses have been in the midst of a really rapidly accelerating transition. And to be competitive, they're doing things like scaling with multi-cloud environments or various softwares, third-party suppliers, distributed workforces, IoT. And for those who are protecting such businesses, that means that our perimeter has a whole new set of vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that are really outside of our own control or visibility. However, what those things also have in common is that they're very interesting entry points for attackers. And this is because while organizations have been evolving, so has the attacker economy. It's become a lot less expensive and a whole lot more scalable. And this is particularly evident when we see the ransomware trends in the last year alone. Now, if anybody has been in this kind of research space for a while, I think you might remember back at the end of 2022, probably going into 2023, we saw analysts really predicting that ransomware, just as one of the kind of vectors of a cybercrime, really was probably going to head into its high watermark, or in other words, it would plateau. We saw anticipatory analysis by firms like PwC that said, look, we've reached the height of ransomware. It's not going away, but realistically, cryptocurrency is becoming more volatile. Law enforcement agencies are having major victories just at the start of that year, at the end of the year, with Deadbolt, with all these different groups. And we could see a great deal of internal conflict within the groups themselves that mean we're probably not going to see a kind of further escalation here. However, this was not actually what played out. What we saw was that last year was the second most profitable year that we know of in history for ransomware. And if anyone's been watching the news, I know it's difficult to estimate total costs and impacts with cybercrime, but last month the crypto tracing firm Chain Analysis tracked a record-breaking $1.1 billion in ransomware payouts just across the blockchains. And if you think about, like I said, that kind of internal conflict, things that are going on in there, the Conti ransomware group is a perfect test case for ransomware as a service models, kind of these models that are able to escalate very quickly, because their internal chat logs were leaked to the world after Conti's stated report for Russia during the war. Or even more recently, we've seen a Chinese firm headquartered in Shanghai who typically would sell their kind of data gathered to Chinese government or state-owned enterprises. They were also experiencing the challenge of losing a number of files that were leaked, at least this time on GitHub. And from what we've gathered from those, I think it was probably 575 files, kind of chat logs, all these different things that were released, what we learned is a lot about how their models work, right? So it gives us a glimpse into the inner working of organizations that you might be working against as a threat hunter, including, or you might be studying as a threat hunter, including the aspects of how they're multi-layered organizations, or how they hire and fire contractors, how they have talent wars over employees, how they have disgruntlement over pay, right? It sounds pretty familiar to everything that your typical organization does. And thanks to the nature of these models, so in this case, if I think about the Conti ransomware group or these other ransomware as a service groups, you have multiple entities involved. You've got the affiliates, you've got the group, you've got the money launderers, and it's pretty scalable as a business, right? So they can rent out their infrastructure, handle negotiations with their victims, launder the ransom payment, and then earn 30% of the ransom demand, which makes it incredibly difficult to take them down, right? They kind of keep coming back and back, as we've seen with Black Cat and Alfie. And by the way, if you've been watching the news in the last few weeks, there's been some very interesting number of exit scams happening with some of these ransomware groups, Black Cat, Alfie, and others. But what we've seen in the last year especially is that the adaptation of the initial entry point and method from ransomware is evolving from our typical expectations, right? So we all know phishing emails, for example. But what Corvus Insurance and a number of other organizations have identified is that in this year specifically, that transition has happened to be more of the external vulnerabilities, and the changing tactics that have driven them mean that the initial access method for a third of extortion attacks today right now is external vulnerabilities. Now, as threat hunters are evolving to this, there's also a couple of other things that are happening as well, right? We've got both the companies and attackers evolving, but that means that we've seen the regulatory environment slowly changing, such that, for example, DORA requires greater digital operational resilience standards in order to simply prevent disruptions like an ICT event. And in addition to those kind of increasingly aggressive threat environment challenges, what we're seeing with threat hunters today is that we're identifying best practices as we go along, right? We're putting together a number of different tools, OSINT, technologies, techniques, for example, And what's been traditionally a very unstructured or self-taught endeavor in a lot of ways has meant that threat hunters are really getting the opportunity now to learn from each other, hopefully more so than ever before, by being able to leverage some of the same information that's coming across different open source tools or different chat groups. Now, one thing that I really want to kind of point out is that you can't really get into best practices around threat detection or threat hunting until you talk about maybe what's actually happening. So that's where I'm just going to start us off as well here, which is, and by the way, as I'm going along, I'd love to know in the chat if your experience is unique or different from these findings. I think the most important thing we can do is share information kind of very broadly. Obviously nothing confidential, but very broadly about your experience as well, to see if you're like anybody else in the chat and learn from them as well. So back to what I was going to say. We recently released some of our research on this topic, really about what are threat hunters doing today. And before I show you some of those findings that I think will help lead to some of our best practices, I do also just want to preface with how we did this research, because that often can generate some questions as well. So we surveyed over 200 threat hunters, specifically from a variety of focuses, but 86% of them were focused on offensive and defensive threat hunting as their kind of main role. We looked at a number of different industries and various sizes. This is both commercial and public sector organizations. And last one kind of split of the demographics would be that it was 52% from North America and 48% Europe. And the reason I bring up geography is that we actually do see a difference in experience between North American and European teams in terms of how they feel about their stress levels, attack frequencies, skill sets, costs, etc. For example, 25% of the respondents from North America said that they feel at the verge of burnout, which was nearly twice the amount of the European teams surveyed. And we also saw that North American teams were experiencing twice as many cyber attacks, right? So there's kind of very different experiences there that we could definitely learn from, but also might impact the results. Therefore, we've broken them out so you can kind of get a sense for what your colleagues are going through in your local region, as well as just broadly and globally. Now, the first thing I want to start with is really the same thing that we talk about in an emergency response, which is kind of where do you start? They teach you in CERT, right? They teach you to start where you stand in the event of a natural disaster. So look around you and see what's going on, which is sometimes what it's like for a threat hunter, right? Where you're kind of going to your daily tasks, but there's a number of different incidents or triggers that might cause you to do further research. And for most organizations and most threat hunters, these are the kind of known indicators. These are notifications of new 0 days, new CVEs, irregularities in kind of the information that's coming in inbound into your systems. But one interesting statistic of note was that 47% of global respondents here are saying that they start an investigation when irregularities are detected by their advanced analytics or machine learning, which we wouldn't have seen many years ago, obviously, based on the tooling that's been evolving from now. So there's an element here of AI, which I'll bring up again later on. I think this is the topic that's on everybody's mind. And for most of the presentations I go to and kind of conversations I have, the question is, well, how do you do this well? So we'll come back to that in a moment as a best practice. However, if you look at the top portion, that kind of regularly scheduled duties, as the reason that people would be looking or prompting to do threat activities within their organization, we actually noticed that this can be compared to 30% of global respondents saying that their organization continuously implements formal threat hunting, right? In other words, that they're continuously researching. We also noticed that North American organizations were a bit more likely than European organizations to say that they're doing these kind of activities on a continuous basis. We also saw that 18% of folks said that they were only really threat hunting on a monthly basis, right? Which is a frequency that's not at pace with what we see with attackers who are looking to exploit exposures or ransomware groups. In fact, if you look at organizations today, and kind of malicious unknown connections that are scanning their attack surfaces, you can see that about every 3 minutes, there are malicious and unknown connections taking place scanning those attack surfaces, which if you think about how long I've been talking, maybe not even 12 minutes, that's probably 4 scans that have just run on an organization right now. And statistically, if we narrow down that research, right, so we said 18% are continuously doing threat hunting. If you look at just organizations looking at their attack surface continuously, kind of a narrower version of that, only 14% of businesses are continuously scanning their own attack surface. In other words, attackers get this outside-in continuous view of exposures where our threat hunting teams don't often have the same resource. And this is magnified by the fact that we see that 88% of exposures online today are not actually the newsworthy CVEs or celebrity vulnerabilities that you see in, the headlines, right? But rather, what we're missing out on is 88% of those risks or exposures are misconfigurations, which are things that security teams would absolutely start the process of remediating, right? Contacting their colleagues, working on how to bring down an S3 storage bucket, for example, and properly configure it. And that really means that there's an opportunity for organizations to continuously monitor and start to build off of that for their own kind of automated purposes, right? Which is where one of my best practices that I'd kind of introduced to you all is really around attack surface management. So this is probably not a new concept for most people on this call. However, what we did find in our research is that 73% of respondents were frequently or always finding unknown assets during their threat hunting process, regardless of the frequency at which they were looking, right? Monthly, weekly, continuously, and so forth. And those forgotten or undocumented or unapproved connections can really pose big risks. And so creating an automation around that gives you the same attacker's perspective, right? Where you are getting a scan at the same time as an attacker could, really helps to protect that digital footprint that's expanded because our businesses have expanded. And this is one of those tools that, for example, Swiss Life or other organizations have used to proactively discover or prioritize that shadow IT, those end-of-life services, those new CVEs or unencrypted login pages, even just assets that are not located in the data center in the correct region, right? And that's one of the contextualized things that we can add as a best practice to our organization to get that same view so that you're starting from the same place. Now, there was a couple of other things that we found in our research, one of which was kind of the indicators of intent that was the starting point of the research itself, right? So if we move away from those kind of macro indicators into more of a micro indicator like a network anomaly, threat hunters were asked about this focus area. And what we found was, your standard expectations, right? And these might be for anyone here who's newer to research, a good place to start, right? Or to set up threat intelligence feeds around. But the last one on this list was quite interesting because when threat hunters were asked about Bitcoin nodes and whether their unexpected presence in a network would serve as an indicator of malicious intent, we found that only 20% of threat hunters say they're actually looking for unexpected Bitcoin nodes as indicators for malicious intent. But it's also very likely, because we've seen that Bitcoin has been historically the kind of bank of choice, so to speak, and been involved in nearly all ransomware attacks in 2023, that it would be a suspicious access request or an indicator that there's something urgent underneath. And if I was to give you some kind of a best practice here, there's a tool that you can use with Census, for example, to start to scan for not just what's going on within a ransomware group, but also to understand where's the Bitcoin addresses, for example. So we've been watching since 2021, I want to say, Deadbolt, which was targeting a series of QNAP NAS devices, which network attached storage devices, I should say, so NAS, which is primarily used by IT teams, right? Distributed workforces where you're sharing digital files, photos, videos, documents, etc. It's the kind of thing that's a compliance nightmare if breached because of just the file sharing and the backups it contains. Now, we've been scanning the entire internet for their hosts infected with Deadbolt, as well as every unique Bitcoin wallet address used as a ransomware drop, which can make for some interesting perspectives, right? And it's something that if you're a researcher, you could go online right now and use Census to understand this without even ever making an account with us, right? You can go out there and get some of this insight for yourself. And you can start to move from a dashboard like this, for example, to just understand even the patterns of different types of devices or which locations are being infected. So if I was just to double click on Germany, for example, which hosts and associated Bitcoin addresses are affected there. Now, we're refreshing this research daily, and it's been running for a while now. So this is something that you can start to leverage as insights or decisions in your own proactive response to threats out there. Now, speaking of the importance of data, I'll also just quickly share this slide with you, which is all the queries that you could use to recreate this for yourself. These links we will make available in the follow-up, just for the queries and everything there, so that way you can take what you need. Now, the piece that I mentioned earlier was around AI as well and the value of it. And here's the thing, 74% of respondents last year said that they found AI incredibly helpful. And this comes up all the time, right? AI can be used for generating threat hunting queries, analyzing feeds, understanding the IOCs or patterns within them, trying to predict things, right? As a standalone, it's pretty interesting. I mean, even just if we think about ChatGPT, one of the many tools out there, they had, 180 million users in the last month alone, right? So it's a pretty popular kind of tooling that we can adapt to what we do. And at Census, for example, we use the Census ChatGPT feature, which translates what your kind of natural language search might be into a specific census query. Or if you use other query tools like Shodan, for example, you can translate those queries into census language, which is really just to, I guess, lower the barrier of entry and accelerate investigations. Now, every practitioner I've talked to and every panel I've been on, there's been this discussion around, well, what are the risks of AI, right? We all know that there's inherent risks in this. So one of my best practices that I would share with you as well here is that there's a really great resource from OWASP, which has this kind of checklist built out, as well as these kind of diagrams that can help you start to think about how do you want to, within your organization, share concerns or make sure that you've properly adjusted for adversarial risk or threat modeling, as well as kind of the different possibilities, so that you can evolve with the actual tooling itself and so that you can start to communicate across your organization. And this was one of the last findings I'll take a moment to share, which was just, we found in our research that for threat hunters, the most challenging communication for them, or the one they felt the least equipped for, was really around communicating with legal or PR, right? They felt pretty comfortable communicating with direct line managers, but when it came to trying to explain the risks that they were dealing with outside of the organization, this got pretty difficult. Or outside of their threat hunting organization or security organization, it got pretty difficult. So this may be a way for you to start to bridge that gap as well between different areas, because there is, within this checklist, some ideas around audits and legal and so forth. This is a publicly available resource that you can Google right now and be able to find pretty easily. But if you can't, just chat to me or reach out to someone on our team and we'll help you find it. Now, I am seeing that I'm getting closer to time, so I'm just going to start to wrap up with a couple of comments. One of which is, in general, what we've found that could be the most useful to actually implement some of these best practices is the asks that we see from threat hunters is they really want better threat hunting tools, better indicators to investigate, and less false positives. And that's fair, right? Almost a third of respondents, at least in this research and from what we've seen elsewhere, have said that 20% of their results are false positives. And that makes it pretty challenging to really be able to go forth and confidently not only communicate with your PR team or your legal team, but within your own team, even to resolve the issues that you've found when you're working with your security or DevOps teams. This is one area where I would introduce Census, and I know I've been speaking briefly here and there about some of the findings and things we can find, but if you've never heard of Census before, this is your first interaction with us, the thing that we do particularly well is reduce false positives in the research for threat hunters who are looking at what's happening on the internet, right? So threat hunters who want to identify all the hosts running HTTP service instead of HTTPS, in order to see whether they're impacted, or whether they're wondering, am I one of the 39,000 Cisco routers running a public SNMP service? Or if you want to know if you're still affected by Log4j, which is, of course, a long time ago now, but realistically, 30% of the hosts that were exposed at the time that the news came out are still today online, unremediated, unpatched. And we know that's because, at least for the most part, we believe it to be organizations just don't know that they're exposed, right? It's the question of, I didn't know it was out there, and it's not, is it mine? Is it somebody else's, right? And so that's where Census Internet Map can assist you, specifically within that. We are the largest scanning infrastructure in the world today, which means that you get a lot of different insights, and you can access that information not only from the dashboards that I've shown you today, but also through simply Census Search. It's available for community users for free. You can start to query what's happening on the internet just directly from that UI. Feels very similar to a Google search, but you're looking for hosts, vulnerabilities, etc. Or you can geofence your results to specifically your organization, right? So if you're an organization that's wondering, that's, important to know that there's a bunch of Cisco routers out there, or that there's Log4j online, but I would really like to know about my organization specifically because that's my focus area. That's where our attack surface management platform comes into play, the one I mentioned earlier. Now, I would like to take a moment and just close with the words of a threat hunter, which I thought were particularly well put, which is threat hunting is really more of an art, right? It's a best practices, series of best practices that are built on a mix of tools and experiences. And as a result, your process is often unique, and it can be really challenging to replicate in a corporate environment or to communicate across teams and to colleagues. And my hope is that with this presentation, if you've heard something, regardless of level of experience, you'll be able to take that piece of information and replicate it into your own workflows or intelligence feeds, whether that's just some of the initial dashboards I've showed you or something greater that you can start to evolve with, for example, leveraging that checklist across your organization. I'll pause here, Mackenzie, and say, are there any questions that I can answer that have come in during the chat?
Sure thing. We do have some questions that have come on in. We might only have time for like one, just because we're a little bit tight on time, but if that's okay, let's dive into it. First question is, where do I find that report that you were talking about?
So I've mentioned a number of reports. If you go to the census.com, there is a drop-down option on our menu for research. It should be one of the first you see, research and resources, and it's the 2024 State of Threat Hunting report.
Amazing. I think that's probably the one. You've got a lot of great resources, so I do want to call out to everyone, check out our handouts tab for the resources from Census, but there's plenty to look at. Another quick question, can I track down 0 days in your search tool?
Yes, glad you asked. Yeah, so we have a rapid response team where we are watching constantly ourselves as threat hunters within the organization, and we're looking for indicators that there may be a new 0 day coming. We look for the impact that they could be, and we very quickly, within our rapid response team, release that research. So within 24 hours, I would definitely recommend going to our rapid response page and subscribing to those notifications. So if you've been looking at the Avanti issues, or you were looking at Move It mid-year last year, or even some of these smaller things, we'll quantify the amount of things online that are exposed, Cisco routers, whatever they are, and edge devices, for example, and then you can start to use those queries in your own research to narrow down to your own organization or to specific areas.
Amazing. And final question, if someone does want to take that next step with you or want to learn some more right away, where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So go to census.com. This is where we have our kind of reach sales or demo requests or different options there. Also, please do feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to do so and just kind of direct you to the right person within our team. There's a lot of great people at Census who are happy to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Celestine. I do have to let you go, but you've been great. Appreciate the presentation and hope to see you on here again.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you all. Cheers.
All right, for everyone out there in the audience, you'll see that I've put up another poll. I know your fingers are warmed up and ready to go, so go hit that now. Again, this is your wish list, your easy button. You want good information, so click on your preference and the team at Census will hand it right to you. We did, once again, have more questions than we had time for. Thank you so much for sending those in. And of course, the Census team will follow up with you to make sure you get any information you are looking for today. And one last kind of reminder about that handouts tab there. You can get the summary PDF of why choose Census. It is there for you to download, and you can take a peek at it now or a little bit later after today's EcoCast. Now we have the second $300 Amazon gift card to give away. A quick reminder that you do need to be here present and live on the EcoCast to win. And so let's hope that our winner is here with us. Little drum roll for Daryl Waries from Idaho. Congrats, Daryl. We'll be in touch after today's event for you to claim your prize. And with that, I have our fourth and final fantastic expert presenter about to come on stage with me here. I'm going to introduce you to Andy Redman, who is the Director of America's Solution Engineering at Progress. Andy, I look forward to your presentation. And one more quick reminder to everyone, there is, of course, that $50 best question gift card up for grabs for each session. So throw up your questions for Andy. We're going to have Q&A with him right after he presents. And Andy, with that, I'm going to hand things over to you. Are you ready?
Terrific. Yes, I am.
All right, take it away.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, welcome to this session where we will explore best practices for how to detect, investigate, and respond to cyber threats. My name, of course, is Andy Redman, and I'm the Director of America's Solution Engineering with Progress Software. I manage a wonderful team of very talented solution architects who really specialize in a few different areas. One is DevSecOps automation with audit and compliance. Another is secure application publishing in multi-cloud environments. Another one is award-winning infrastructure management solutions. And then finally, NetSecOps specialists as well. This team is truly fantastic. As a quick introduction into Progress software, Progress's portfolio of industry-leading solutions are really focused on enabling our customers to develop the applications that they need, to deploy them how they want, and to manage them safely and securely. Now, regarding our customers, who are they? This is a great question, considering you may not know that Progress software is actually an essential part of the largest companies on the planet. Progress is essential to their business operations. The top 10 companies, tech companies, rely on Progress. We are essential to their actual business operations. 70% of all Fortune 500 companies are consuming Progress solutions as well. Now, the 30 largest companies in the world are also Progress companies, customers. And it's not surprising considering Progress software has an amazing portfolio of essential business solutions. Additionally, and it's really important to note, we have a 3.5 million plus thriving developer community. So now that you know a little bit more about me and Progress, let's dig into the meat of the webinar. Okay, the webinar will cover the following agenda items. An introduction. Okay, excellent. We've already covered who Progress is and who I am, so let's move on. The threat landscape overview. We're going to talk about numerous different mechanisms leveraged to execute attacks in the threat landscape. We're also going to discuss perhaps what are some of the historic challenges organizations face, but also the challenges that present themselves today. Challenges are changing and becoming more sophisticated. Hence, we need to know what they are so that we can be prepared for a proper response. We will also highlight current tools that security operations centers, SOCs, leverage and discuss if there's an important gap in tooling that needs to be rectified. I'm going to suggest now that there is a gap. We're going to take a closer look at Flowmon NDR. So network detection and response enables an important lens into threat actor movement, coupled with facilitating a means to respond to active threats in order to mitigate risk. What about the cost of a data breach? There is a cost associated to every breach, and in most cases, the cost of a breach is far greater than the actual investment to stop the breach. There is plenty of evidence to support my claim, and we'll discuss it. Finally, we'll finish up with a discussion on best practices. As one of my coworkers says to me frequently, buckle up, Buttercup, let's get going. The threat landscape today is fairly ripe. There's a mix of elements involved in this landscape. Ransomware happens every 11 seconds or so. Orgs which experience ransomware are prone to a second or third attack per reported breach data. I believe the number of second and third attacks is in the high 70% range based upon the research that I've done. That's pretty staggering to me. So there's a clear takeaway, and it's pretty simple. Gaps in breach protection are not contained, and sleeper cells may still remain in the environment. Malware. the source of so many attacks. Malware can come into the environment through numerous different methods. They can be through a social campaign, an insider threat, or other mechanisms. Supply chain. Well, if we're all to stop and think about it, the world did change after SolarWinds. Not because virus, bad actors, black hats, or any other malicious act was new, but it changed because of how the real issue of software supply chain safety and security was. Phishing. Come on, just click that link. Well, upwards of 80% of all malware-based ransom attacks are a direct result of someone clicking this or clicking that, even with constant guidance from corporate IT or the company CISO telling them not to. And this data comes directly from Verizon's data breach investigations report. I wish that when I went fishing, I was so blessed to catch something. I love seafood. What about cryptojacking? The interesting thing about the threat actors leveraging your computers and servers for their crypto mining enrichment is that they leverage those endpoint servers as what I'll term the first step in a multi-staged attack on your infrastructure. Once their software is on your endpoints, basically your computers, your servers, it's basically game on for additional malware attacks leading to data breach. IoT. So many insecure edge devices can become further attack elements or endpoints in your environment. How do you know when they are being used? Do you have a lens into their use? Okay, insider threats. Just take this thumb drive and plug it in. We'll do the rest of the work. This is a common attack method leveraged. It's really a simple way for an employee to gain some extra funds, even if they aren't disgruntled and love their work, but simply want to make an extra 10 grand or so for an easy bit of work. Add to that list the threat of artificial intelligence leveraged to automate various types of attacks and response actions. Mitigating risk can appear to be very challenging. However, there is wonderful news, and the truth is, according to the 2023 IBM Cost of a Data Breach report, organizations that use security AI and automation extensively within their approach experienced, on average, a 108-day shorter time to identify and contain a breach. They also reported, on average, a 1.76 million lower data breach cost compared to organizations that didn't use security AI and automation capabilities. So the average dwell time of a threat actor within an organization's environment is approximately 277 days. Now, if you could invest far less than 1.76 million to mitigate risk in its infancy, why wouldn't you do that? Threat actors leverage AI, but so can you. Okay, so in 2015, cybersecurity operations faced a significant hurdle, the lack of visibility. Back then, organizations struggled to gain insights into their network activities, making it difficult to detect and respond to threats effectively. This lack of visibility left security teams in the dark and really unable to identify potential risks lurking within their systems. Fast forward to 2024, and the landscape has transformed dramatically. We now find ourselves dealing with a different kind of challenge, event overload. With the proliferation of connected devices, cloud services, and shadow IT sprawling, coupled with digital transactions being leveraged, security operations teams are truly inundated with an overwhelming volume of alerts and events daily. This leads to several challenges we face today. Firstly, security teams no longer have a single correlated view of their environment. Instead, they are bombarded with thousands of alerts from disparate systems, making it nearly impossible to gain a comprehensive understanding of their security posture. So with so many alerts to sift through, security analysts struggle to prioritize and investigate each one thoroughly. This makes it challenging to identify and respond to real attacks in a timely manner, leaving organizations vulnerable to prolonged breaches and data loss. Adding to the complexity is the shortage of security talent. Despite the growing demand for skilled cyber professionals, there simply aren't enough qualified individuals to meet the needs of organizations worldwide. It's a real shame. So let's talk a little bit more about event overload. So what are the consequences of alert overload on security operations? The staggering statistics paint a concerning picture of the challenges faced by security teams in managing the influx of alerts. Firstly, a remarkable 55% increase has been observed in organizations experiencing more than 10,000 alerts per day. So this avalanche of alerts overwhelms security analysts, making it nearly impossible to manually review each one thoroughly. It just doesn't happen. In response to this overwhelming volume, 57% of orgs have implemented policies to reduce alert volume. Okay, that sounds good, I think. Okay, while these policies are aimed at alleviating the burden on security teams, they often result in missing critical alerts amidst the noise. So a significant 54% of security professionals report an experience of high stress and frustration due to alert overload. This constant barrage of alerts leads to what I'll term alert fatigue, where analysts become desensitized and may actually overlook critical security events. Faced with the latest development in IT infrastructures, perhaps made even worse by recent global events, security admins may find that their existing tools give them visibility that is at best nebulous and not just because of the cloud. Even though endpoint protection consumes a substantial part of the security budget, what happens? Breaches still happen and sensitive data gets stolen. Moreover, endpoint visibility is not always complete. How many servers are actually covered, or industrial or medical equipment? And now that many staff members work remotely and service providers receive greater access to company networks, can you really be sure users can be trusted and will keep their devices secure? Of course, security operations routinely use SIEMs or SIEMs to deal with such issues. Capable though they are, every SIEM is only as powerful as its data source. So without reliable feeds and sufficient coverage, the SIEM is blind. Attackers can also tamper with logs to mask their movements, and in some cases, logging may even be turned off to save up on performance. This means that there is a risk that threats are being missed among floods of false positives or are simply slipping through the visibility gaps. The line of thought has been picked up by Gartner, who has developed it into a concept which is called the SOC visibility triad, consisting of three complementary pillars. Two of the pillars are SIEM and endpoint detection and response, EDR, and the third is called network detection and response, or NDR. NDR adds the network perspective to the model and thus completes the SOC visibility triad. This is precisely where Flowmon resides, in the NDR, or network detection and response space. Detection, investigation, and response are the core elements of network detection and response. So regarding detection, there are a few key principles to note. Proactivity. This means constant vigilance and regular system checks. Integration. This applies unifying threat detection systems across all platforms and networks. And then adaptability. Systems must evolve to detect new and emerging threats. Well, what about the key elements in the investigation phase? You've got digital forensics. These are the techniques used for collecting and analyzing data to uncover evidence. Then there's the IRT, the incident response teams. These guys are specialized groups that manage the response to security breaches or attacks. And then there's the chain of custody. It's critical to ensure that all evidence is accurately documented and preserved for potential legal proceedings. This applies directly to the new SEC, or Security and Exchange Commission, cyber compliance rules that were recently put in place. So then, how do you respond to threats that will, and what will your threat response actually be? You need to have an IRP, or an incident response plan. This is a predefined set of guidelines for detecting, responding to, and recovering from security incidents. Then there's the communication protocol, ensuring timely and clear communication with the response team and to external stakeholders is absolutely essential. Then there's the post-incident review. This is really the postmortem, which is focused on analyzing the incident to learn from the breach and improve your future security posture. All right. Now, I previously highlighted Flowmon briefly as part of the SOC visibility triad. I would like to formally introduce you to Flowmon. Flowmon is a cutting-edge solution that revolutionizes network security with the power of AI, or artificial intelligence. Imagine having an AI-powered network security analyst at your fingertips, tirelessly monitoring your network all day and all night, 24/7, analyzing traffic patterns and identifying potential threats in real time. That's what Flowmon delivers. Flowmon delivers advanced threat detection, distilling thousands and thousands of alerts into a few security incidents that you should focus on. Flowmon delivers real-time insights and actionable intelligence, which fundamentally shortens the time to investigate attacks and automate responses to those attacks. Flowmon also delivers full observability into your hybrid and multi-cloud environments to facilitate smooth network operations and fast root cause analysis. These are a few of the wonderful things Flowmon delivers. Yes, there are more, but I can't cover all of them today, unfortunately. So how does Flowmon accomplish what it does so well? And this is really an excellent question. When you deploy a tool like Flowmon, what becomes very clear very quickly is the sheer magnitude of events being discovered. Now, it's important to note that these events may be legitimate and important cyber events to track, or they may simply be just noise. There is no way a security engineer can go through each of these events manually. That would take an enormous amount of time. We're talking tens of thousands at times. This is precisely why so many legitimate attacks are missed, considering the amount of event noise. Genuine attacks are buried in the noise. So how do you deal with this dynamic then? Well, the only way this challenge can be dealt with is through leveraging artificial intelligence to do the heavy lifting or distilling of thousands and thousands of events into a few incidents that require a forensic lens for further analysis. There are other mechanisms Flowmon leverages, such as machine learning, adaptive baselining, heuristics, and more. Flowmon has developed hundreds of proprietary algorithms and threat detection methods that enable it to boil down the magnitude of events into a threat index ranking for the SOC operator to focus on. You don't want to fiddle around with events that really have no relevance to a threat actor's cyber campaign. Get rid of the noise and focus on the relevant events. Okay then, what is the cybersecurity value here? You can minimize breach impact, monitor the network traffic to proactively alert on the compromise at an early stage so that breach dwell time can be reduced. Network traffic does not lie. Packets don't lie. Hence, it's your best source of truth for detecting relevant events. You need to reduce the number of events by connecting the dots between seemingly unrelated events to building an actual full picture of a security incident so that you can focus on the high priority ones. They will thank you when you increase tech staff's efficiency. You will be enabling less experienced team members with the ability to conduct complex investigations because the heavy lifting has been done with them by Flowmon. Okay, how do you gain more confidence in responding to incidents? Well, with noiseless insights and hard evidence on root cause, severity, damage, and impacted systems, remedial actions are done much more accurately. Finally, you need to equalize the protection of heterogeneous environments, cloud, hybrid, on-premise, or SaaS. It doesn't make sense to have a different process for every unique environment. It's hard enough to figure out in a single environment. Don't make it more complex by using different tools for different environments. Let's consider some accurate, eye-opening statistics. During a breach, the average cost is estimated to be $4.54 million. The average time to detect a breach is 56 days. For a few months, with no eyeballs on them, threat actors have a literal playground with no supervision to guard activity. The average dwell time of a threat actor in a network is 277 days. That's staggering. Picture this. By reducing detection time to just 2 hours, attackers have significantly less time to collect, encrypt, and exfiltrate data. Now, imagine cutting investigation time to just 1 hour. This allows for a faster response, minimizing lateral movement within the network. Now, with this level of intelligence, you can trigger more targeted responses, resulting in less operational and business impact. Instead of needing to recover 60 devices, you might only need to focus on 5. So let's consider the financial impact. Imagine reducing the cost of a data breach from the average of 4.5 mil down to $500,000. Now, with the cost of the Flowmon solution averaging a nominal 80,000, the return on investment, ROI, equals that of a single incident. It's actually far less than that. So by reducing detection and response times, organizations can significantly mitigate the financial and operational impact of data breaches. It's not just about protecting data. It's about safeguarding the viability and reputation of your organization. As promised, here are a number of best practices for you to keep in mind. Continuous vigilance. There needs to be regular monitoring and updating of security systems to stay ahead of evolving threats. You need to implement the proactive measures to detect anomalies and potential breaches. You do that through a product like Flowmon. What about cross-functional collaboration? There needs to be an established, clear communication channel and protocol for effective coordination among various teams involved in threat detection, investigation, and response. Regular training sessions are important to ensure all stakeholders are equipped to handle security incidents. Then there's threat intelligence integration, leveraging threat intelligence feeds and platforms to stay informed about emerging threats and attack vectors. It also means incorporating threat intelligence into security strategies to enhance detection and response capabilities. Then there's incident response preparedness, developing and regularly updating incident response plans, IRPs, that outline roles, responsibilities, and steps to be taken during security incidents, conducting tabletop exercises and simulations to test the effectiveness of these IRPs and improve response readiness. Then there's post-incident analysis and improvement, right? There's conducting thorough post-incident reviews, postmortems, to identify gaps in security measures and response procedures. Then there's implementing corrective actions and process improvements based on lessons learned from security incidents. And then finally, compliance and regulatory adherence, ensuring compliance with relevant industry regulations and standards to mitigate legal and financial risks associated with security breaches. Regular audits are important and assessments to evaluate compliance with security standards and regulations. To summarize, you've learned a little bit about me, but more importantly about Progress Software and the types of organizations who consume and use Progress solutions. We discussed the current threat landscape, the real challenges that orgs have, what are core SOC tools. We examined Flowmon Network Detection and Response, or NDR, how much a data breach costs on average, and then we highlighted numerous best practices for you to consider. Thanks so much for investing your time with me today, and thank you kindly for your gracious attention throughout this session. Back over to you, Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I think you got people fired up with Flowmon and the use of AI here. So we might have a few questions about that. But before we dive into the questions, I'm just going to make sure everyone sees we've got a poll up here. So feel free to answer this. I know your fingers are ready to fire up and go. And this one here is, how are you protecting your organization against threat actors who are continuously evolving threats? So please do answer that now. And then I'm going to give you a minute to answer that. And then I'll have another poll just on your timeframes and any additional resources you're looking for from Progress. I feel like maybe I'm going to play the Canadian card here, and I don't know how to say progress or progress. You'll have to give me your way, Andrew. It's a lifelong battle.
Either works as long as you're saying it.
All right, there we go. Progress. We got it. Quick question. So we have in the handouts tab a link, and this link goes to kind of like a simulation, I believe, for the Flowmon AI, and you stop the breach. Can you tell me about this? How does this work?
Yeah, fantastic. So there is a link, and basically it's what we call a guided tour. And there's two aspects of it. When you click the link, you'll be taken to this interface online, and you've got the ability of looking at a network detection and response, basically a cyber security based simulation of how the Flowmon tool actually works and how it gives you the requisite insight that you need to make decisions really quickly. The other aspect is NPM, or Network Performance and Monitoring and Diagnostic. Basically, if you have a performance-related issue within your environment, the core of the Flowmon tool is brilliant network telemetry, and you'll be able to see quickly how you can root cause performance-related issues incredibly quickly. We're talking lickety-split fast in your environment. So that's what that guided tour is all about.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you haven't clicked that already, if you're out in the audience, hop into the handouts tab. You'll see that pop up right away. Really cool resource. If you don't have time to flick through it now or you want to pay attention to the questions, just earmark that. So if you do want to interact with it later, you've got it handy. And with that, I'm going to close out this poll for anyone who hasn't answered. I'll give you like 5 seconds and then flip over to our final poll of the day. But with that, Andrew, you ready to answer some questions I've kind of picked through on Flowmon here?
Sure, let's dig in.
Okay, first one is, how does Flowmon integrate with other security tools like SIEM?
Yeah, brilliant question. So actually, Flowmon is the SIEM's best friend. And the reason for that is because Flowmon has brilliant network telemetry. When you implement Flowmon into a network, it sees every single endpoint, who they're talking to, what they're talking about. And there's a seamless connection between, Flowmon's incredibly extendable. There's a seamless connection between Flowmon and the SIEM. And it's basically feeding that SIEM with brilliant information about what's happening in the environment.
Wow. Okay, cool. Question here related to scalability. So it says, I'm concerned about scalability. How can Flowmon adapt to growing network environments?
Yeah, excellent question. Because when you're talking about geo-based dispersed systems that are multi-cloud in nature, where you've got stuff on-prem, you've got stuff in multiple different clouds, and you've done that across multiple different geographic regions, you need a single pane of glass to be able to visualize what's happening in each of those respective environments. We have customers that are literally monitoring 300 million endpoints, both from a network performance standpoint and from a security standpoint as well, with thorough integration into third-party SIEM products as well. So the product scales from very small environments to incredibly large environments because it's actually next generation flow-based, not packet-based in its nature. So it's incredibly lightweight in how it scales. Great question.
All right, nice. Okay, I'm going to combine a few kind of mixed queries. So one here is about kind of Flowmon's accuracy of detection, and another one brings up that, AI is really only as good as the data it's being fed. So how are you weeding out bad data? So kind of, data accuracy and general accuracy of detection, if you can spread some light on that.
Not a problem whatsoever. I made a statement in the session and I said, the network traffic is your best source of truth. Packets don't lie. They are your brilliant source of truth. And so what we do is we basically take our probes in a network environment. We extract raw packet from the network. We convert that to a super lightweight flow. So the accuracy of what we do from an actual source of truth standpoint is top rate and highly scalable. Now, we've developed a passive signature-less based product. We can operate with signatures like IDS or MISP or other third-party, feeds into the system, but we've developed these algorithms that are directly basically mapped to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is basically the systematic approach a threat actor would make in a network to try and find that really high value data to then exfiltrate it. Our system is based on a passive consumption of that raw network traffic. And basically, we've developed these algorithms and methods that allow us to see systematically. For example, if a laptop was infected at a coffee shop, it was brought into the corporate network, it was plugged in. What's that laptop going to try and do? It's going to try and find out who are the hosts on the network. Where is that storage? And there are very basic baseline methods by which that threat actor is going to leverage in a network setting to try and find that storage to exfiltrate it. And we see every endpoint. We see every single thing they're doing. We're baselining all of their communication. So we see if someone tries to do a scan, we see that real time, and we can mitigate risk basically instantly.
Wow. Okay. You guys, this is some sophisticated tooling here. I love it. Okay, I think we're almost at time, but how about I give you one final question here? This one is about deployment options for Flowmon. So I'm curious about the deployment options. Can it be implemented on-prem, in the cloud, or in a hybrid environment?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's a really good question. We have customers that are global in nature that have stuck Flowmon devices in, take for instance, Google Cloud, GCP, and they are actually sending flow data from their native network devices, routers, switches, firewalls, etc., from on-premise environments directly into the cloud. They're doing analysis of that. They're also, they've got an extensive amount of virtual private cloud environments AWS, Google Cloud, et cetera. And they're consuming what are called native flow logs within those environments that give a subset of detail included within those native flow logs. It can be installed on premise in hardware and virtualized environments. The brilliant thing about Flowmon is that you can deploy a virtual collector, a virtual Flowmon device in a virtualized environment, and then pull in native flow from existing networking devices without doing anything else in your environment, and have a brilliant lens into what's happening on the network at a very low cost standpoint.
Amazing. Okay, I'm being a little cheeky, but I'm going to throw you one more question. From Marek, what is the time from signing to implementing the tool?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So here's the thing. Most of the time POCs are done, right? Customers want to see, hey, I've got raw data. I want to see what your solution is going to tell me about my own environment. And so when we go through that POC, once we've deployed the virtual image, for example, once we've IP addressed it and done the basic configuration, it's basically when we start sending flow data to the product, it starts analyzing that via AI machine learning instantly. So a nominal 30 minutes after we've pulled in data, we can root cause performance problems basically instantly, because we'll see all the traffic in the environment if we're getting the right flow data to the collector. Now, there are times where it takes a little bit longer because of extensive networks, and we have to deploy like a virtual or a hardware probe in the environment to extract that flow data, because the network gear doesn't have the requisite information in the flow records that are important for us to see. That would take just a little bit more time, but we believe, the quickest time to visualizing performance or cyber related issues on the planet. And we can prove it.
Incredible. Okay. Amazing. So I do have to let you go, but if someone wants to get started right away, other than going through that kind of walkthrough demo in the handouts tab, where should they go? How do they contact you? What's the best first step?
Yeah. Brilliant question. Andy.Redman, REDMAN, Andy.Redman at progress.com.
Thank you for accommodating my pronunciations.
You betcha, bro.
It's like tomato. I don't know.
Got it.
Alrighty. That's amazing. So yeah, feel free to hit up Andy direct by email. Again, handouts tab for that walkthrough of Flowmon, and check it out. Flowmon, rather. I'm giving you all the mixes. And with that, thank you for being here today, Andy.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Take good care. Cheers. Alrighty. And with that, it is time to give away our third and final prize. I know we got a lot of questions there for progress. And if they didn't get answered today, we will definitely be passing those on to the team, and they'll reach out afterwards so that you can get as much good information as you can. And let's give away that final prize. So thank you for being here, being live, being interactive. I really appreciate it. And you do have to be here live to accept your prize. So this goes to Tarun Chintu from Massachusetts. And I hope you are still here and you just heard your name called out. Congratulations. And again, a huge congrats to our 3 winners of the day. Just to recap, the first gift card from Amazon went out to Nick Sherman from Georgia, the second to Daryl Waries from Idaho, and the third and final to Tarun Chintu from Massachusetts. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar, plus those best question gift cards from each session. Hopefully you win. I'm sending you luck and good vibes from my end here. If you are on the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, EcoCast, or MegaCast webinar, we would love to hear from you. Reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com, and we'll be able to send over any information and get the conversation started. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers from eCentire, Rubrik, Census, and Progress Security for making this EcoCast possible and for being here with us today. And of course, a special thank you to all of you for attending, asking some great questions, and being interactive, sharing the energy and the learning. I had so much fun with you all today, talking about how to, these best the best practices for detecting, investigating, and responding to threats. And I hope you all got some interesting ideas and tips. Maybe you're leaving feeling lit up and ready to take some next steps. So if you did enjoy the EcoCast today, I want to remind you that we always have great events coming up, and we've got another EcoCast that you should mark your calendar for soon. This is April 3rd, Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Pacific. And this one is on getting started with the multi-cloud management with our friends at Nutanix. So again, check that out, mark your calendars. And with that, I'm going to let you go. I hope to see you all again soon, and I hope you have an absolutely magical day. Take care.